And talking about technical issues, there's a chance that this live stream is not playing on YouTube. So yeah, I don't know if it's working. It's just that something changed in one of the multiple systems that we use to restream to several websites, and YouTube wasn't there, and I put it back, but I don't know if it's working. Okay, so I truly hope it is. If it's not, like if you went to YouTube to watch this and you didn't find us there, please tell me those in the chat, right? So here we are again.
I think it's working. I think it's working.
It is. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So here we are again. Callie has joined us once again. Now this time it's not going to be the regular presentation. You already know her, possibly. If you don't, you should, because we've streamed a while ago about narrative design, and it was a very interesting chatting. So I suggest you to watch it. It's available on YouTube right now. And yeah, but anyway, for those who do not know you, just quick, introduction.
Quick intro.
Yeah, quick intro.
So I'm Kali. I'm a narrative designer at Behold Studios, and I'm also a writer and translator here in Brazil. And I think that about sums it up. Okay, of the things that I do.
Yeah, and yeah, we're here today to talk about documentation, which is, I don't know, it's just something that came up a while ago. People were like discussing in the internet, or like on whether it's useful or it's like a complete waste of time. And I think there's a bit to cover there, and I don't know, we should start like just saying that documentation is not necessarily like the game design document, right? Like when we think about documentation in games, it's normally this is the first thing that comes to mind, but it's really about like every single thing you can just write it down somewhere and have it as a support for you in the future, right? Like when the obviously like designing stuff is all about like taking notes and putting them in multiple places, which is one of the issues that we may have with documentation, like having it in multiple places. But anyway, but when you're like actually writing stuff, that's a question that I kind of have. How do you document like writing, like narrative design? How do you usually do that?
I don't do it much. Okay. It's just that I document things like by hand, like writing. So I have tons of notebooks, so it's not very organized. No, but for people who write longer stuff, because I usually, when I'm just like writing a narrative, I usually write short stories, so it's a bit easier, to keep track of what's going on. But I know that people who write longer stuff, they use some apps like Scrivener, and even Notion, like to have a list of everything that you're doing and have lists of characters and character sheets and everything that you need, to write a longer piece of work.
Exactly. Oh, so yeah, pretty much the idea behind documenting stuff is like keeping track of your work and your goals. Right?
Exactly.
That's something that I don't know. I come from an academic background, yeah, and I don't know. People seem to like document stuff there. It's kind of a good thing about academy. People just write things down everywhere. So I might be biased because of that, but I really enjoy like documenting stuff. I don't know. I think that when we start writing things down, eventually you start like questioning yourself about things that you didn't before, things you didn't even thought about, and there's kind of a magic in there. Like it's kind of when you it's like you're chatting with yourself, you know, when you're documenting stuff.
And sometimes, like, just by writing a list of the things that you're working on, you start to understand what are your priorities there. Like, okay, so I'm working on, I don't know, 6 things at the same time. So I'm going to write them here, and I'm going to see which of them are, you know, the priority. And sometimes you end up choosing not to write one thing there because it's more like in your head than an actual project, and it's okay to leave it for later. So you start also, as you write it down, like, you start to organize your mind around what you're really going to prioritize for a certain period of time.
Yeah, definitely. And now thinking about it, there, like I mentioned that I started like documenting stuff at a university, right? But it is actually very different. Like the flow of using documentation is very different. Because normally, well, at least I was like that at university. I didn't actually plan stuff by documenting it, you know? I used to like do whatever I could with the time I had, and I was just trying to be my best there. And eventually, I've done all that work, and I had to put it down on the paper because I had to deliver it and explain people what was the process of the, I don't know, the project. And that is very different from what we actually do in game development, right? Like we normally document stuff on the fly. Like it's not something that you stop working and you just, you know, finish your game and then you're okay, now I can write it down. Like at that point it's totally pointless unless we're gonna sell it or whatever.
Yeah, but even if you want to sell it, like, I don't think it will be as complete, you know, because things change in the middle of development and you can't really remember everything. And it's not that every single tiny detail has to be there, but the more detailed you can make it, you know, and the more you can, I don't know, somehow follow the changes that happen throughout your project, the more valuable it will be if you ever want to sell it.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and that's really present in writing. Like lots of people write creation diaries, for example, and there's like a whole critic school which basically studies diaries and letters written by authors, and you know, more than just the works themselves. So I think it is kind of valuable, you know, to really follow how things happen, follow the changes in something, follow process.
Yeah, and talking about changes, like when we were developing a game, we normally change a bunch of stuff, during the development, right? Like we have that idea, and then eventually we realize it's not a great idea, and then we move it. And one like great point of documenting things, I see it at least, is that like when you document even the changes, like when you leave the changes there, it kind of serves as a reminder of what has changed and why it has changed. Because sometimes, and I see this happening, like it's not sometimes, it happens all the time. We're working on a game for like 6 months, and eventually we're gonna be like having the same discussion we had many months ago. Like we just we kind of forget why we went that way, and documenting always helps with that. Like we rarely document as well as we should. Because if we were documenting things like perfectly, we would always have that right answer, you know, like we would, oh, well, why did we choose that? Oh, it was, okay, this is the answer, right? This is the reason. Just a little time just to welcome everyone. So welcome Red Link, bom dia GG, Joca Rocha, Aklockner, and yes, welcome you all who chatted. Thanks for participating. Red link saying documentation is useless. Okay.
What?
No, he's joking. He said, it used to be like my mind is in the best documentation. Is the best documentation I need until I start forgetting things. Yeah, that's the point. That's actually all the point there is in documenting stuff. Like our minds are not perfect, you know, on like storing information. We forget stuff because we need to forget, right? And there are certain things that you cannot forget during game development or any big project.
No, and sometimes you can't, like, it's maybe you can trust your mind, but when you're working with more people, like, do you want to trust
Definitely
everyone's minds? And this thing, for example, okay, we changed something, and then 2 months later, people are asking, why did we change it? Why don't we go back? So maybe you'll remember why it was changed, but maybe someone else won't remember, and maybe a third person will remember it differently, and then you will end up having to have the whole conversation again. So it's at this point, for this, I think documentation is also useful as kind of a guide. Like something that you can go back to, something that you don't necessarily have to leave everything, you know, to your memory and to your instincts. Because when you're working with a team, like, I think when you're working solo, it also applies, but when you're working with a team, it's very important that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, definitely.
And it helps.
Yeah, we kind of have to, like, communication in game development is a whole new subject where we could like be multiple live streams talking about that because it's a very, very deep subject. But one thing that is like I think, to sum it up, like, communication is key, right? When you're working with a lot of people, you don't get to not communicate properly, because if you do that, you're gonna have lots of problems. Like, people will not understand what you're doing. The team will like be developing different games, you know, because every person has an idea of the game that they're developing, and that idea starts very subjectively, and it is like absolutely different in every developer's mind until you start like lining it up with documentation and meetings and chattings and stuff like that. And documentation is like a very strong pillar in that. There's just no way people are gonna like idealize the same game as you are thinking about if you don't put it on paper, or I don't know, Google Docs or whatever. But okay, Acklochner, yes.
I think it's Acklochner. Hi there.
Okay, Acklochner. Cool. Yeah, I am pretty bad at pronouncing nicknames. I'm sorry for that. So, fundamental idea of documentation. You barely know what you're doing right now. Imagine 6 months from now. Yes, exactly. What was I thinking? That's it. That's the core of it. Mahomushi saying, I'm a technical writer and I work with mobile games. Documentation's is a high way to achieve success. I'd agree with that, yeah. But there's also like the possibility of over documentation. Do you think there's such a thing, Cal?
I don't know if I'd use over documentation, but I think we have to like think about the time we're spending on documentation, because of course you can spend more time documenting things than actually doing things. Sometimes you have to go out and actually try and experiment with things, and it's fine if it doesn't go as well, because if you just, you know, theorize about what you're going to do, then where's the doing? Exactly. Right, so I think that's something that we always need to think about too.
Yeah, I'd say it's like there's no limit to the amount of time or the amount of, I don't know, words you spend documenting stuff, but I'd say it varies like heavily from team to team. like my experiences at least, they reflect like very different approaches and very different results with different team members. Some people work marvelously with documentation, and you can like write a book for them, and they'll read and they'll keep their minds on it, and think about and ask you questions and help improving that document. And some people would just never ever open that document in their lives, like never. Like they have access to it, you can put it in their faces and they won't read it. And I mean, there might be a problem in the extremes, but mostly, like if you're writing a book, like if you're writing a very very word heavy documentation to a team that is not used to reading that much, it's not used to accessing whatever portal or place you have that documented in, you're pretty much wasting your time. Not totally, because there's also that part that we just mentioned about like reflecting on things that you're thinking and redesigning in your head. But there is like a huge potential that's missing when people do not access that. And so I think, I don't know, it may depend on how the team works, right? Like the limit of okay, maybe passing this point, it's not useful anymore. I'm just talking to myself here, right?
Yeah, and I think it also might depend a little bit on the kind of project that you're like developing. Not that there are like, oh, these projects need less documentation and these need more, but depending on what the team's trying to make, maybe everyone has a very clear idea, because it's something like, I don't know, sometimes you want to work with a big cliche, and then people have it a bit more clear in their minds. But if you're trying to come up with something super new, you're going to end up having to think about it much more, and write it up, and think of ways like to solve the problems that will appear. And then you have to write that down. So I think it also, it might help when it might help for you to need less documentation if you're working with something which is a bit more known. If like, okay, I want to make like something which is like Super Mario, but instead of Super Mario, I want it to be, I don't know, a raccoon. And then you kind of have already this idea of, everyone has a clear idea of what Mario games usually are like, even if you say, okay, classic Mario, so that's very clear on everyone's minds. But if you're thinking, oh no, I want to mix Dark Souls with, I don't know, Ratchet and Clank, then that's going to be very very different, and that's something that you might have to need, you need to have one place in which you explain what that is to yourself.
Yeah, totally. That's something that Behold faces like quite often. I don't know if you people watching ever noticed that, but Behold has a tendency of not repeating games. Like we don't stick to things that we already know, which it's arguably a flaw. Eventually it might be healthy to start like refining your skills instead of trying things, new things all the time. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that like, since every time we're making a game, we're making it something like very novel, and we're trying to like create combine genres and find very niche and, I don't know, unexpected games to develop, we end up like facing that kind of issue all the time. Like right, so you're talking about, for example, Autospace. Autospace was in a strategy game that was couch fun, right? So it had to look like and feel like Overcooked, but at the same time it had to be strategy. Like we wanted strategy in the game. How much of each? Is it gonna be like an RTS? Is it gonna be a frenetic kind of overcooked like gameplay. It's gonna be like very action based. You never know unless you start like documenting that stuff, and setting your pillars and like having meetings with the team and defining all that kind of stuff. It's very hard. Okay, lots of messages here. Let me just have a quick look at them. You know what they say, documentation is for nerds. It is. Like, aren't we all?
I'm a nerd. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's what we hear. Okay, so that said, we can call him that. It's not a Kloschner. We can call him that. That is cool and it's easier. Thank you for that. At what size of game should you spend a lot of time on documentation? I'd say, okay, so a lot of time, like we just said, it depends on the project and it depends on the team. But I'd say every project needs a little bit of documentation. I've done documentation for game jam games. That might be too much. You can defend that, and I'd see your point. But believe me or not, like it was useful. Like it was useful for me while designing the game, and at some point it was like very quick and chaotic. But people on the team were like opening the document and trying to understand the concept of the game, especially because it was very abstract and non-gamey experience that we were designing. Like it was kind of a narrative focused abstract mass, and so people were not used to developing those things in game jams. So the point is it's never too small, to have documentation. Like I see ways of making documentation useful in multiple sizes of games.
Yeah, I think it's super valid to have documentation in a game jam because you have so little time, to work with that it actually, I don't know, it makes sense to me that you'd have something, with your goals there and the project itself, so that you don't have to like interrupt someone else because you ended up forgetting or you didn't understand something. So you have, a reference, and I think it makes sense. I really, I don't know. At first I was like, wow, but now I'm like, actually, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it kind of saves a lot of time because when someone's working on something that's not the way it should be, I'm not saying that everything should follow the idea of the designer. That's not what I mean. But sometimes we're reaching we're trying to achieve something, and if someone in the team doesn't get it, their work is not gonna be as good as it could be, or maybe it's not gonna be even useful during that time window that we have. So when you only have like 2-3 days to finish a game, it's very important that everyone in the team can produce things that are useful in the end. They're gonna be a part of the game. So avoiding those missteps and that rework, that level rework, is very, very crucial in game jams. A few more commentaries here.
There was a chopper here, so I was like, okay, I gotta mute this, and I ended up like.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No one noticed. Okay, so what you're saying, I mean, I don't want to spend like 3/4 hours documenting a game for a game jam. Yeah, you might want. I don't know. Yeah. If you don't want that, that's cool, but
it can work without it. I mean, of course, it can work without it. It will depend on the team.
Like personally, what I feel like I stopped working as artist on game jams. Like sometimes I don't know. I just feel like I want to code or produce art for jams, but that's quite rare. I normally only design on game jams. And when you're only designing, you're mostly like managing the team and trying to make their life easier, like in game jams. And documenting stuff is one of the ways you can use your time to reduce their waste of time. So I don't know. It might be an opportunity, an interesting opportunity for you if you ever like see yourself in that position. One must always strive for balance. Well-documented stuff that doesn't achieve its purpose is meaningless. That is true. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
Doc for games cannot. What? Okay. Okay. Be onboarding. Okay, can be onboarding playbooks, feature overview, processes, change logs, postmortems, and more. Yeah, that's a good point. So there's actually like a bunch of ways of documenting things. Do you want to like start talking about what we're doing on cosplay? We can't talk much about the game, but we can talk about the process. So what are some of the tools that we've been using to document stuff and to share information?
Okay, so I think first and foremost, we have a GDD, right? We have a game design document, and it's constantly being reviewed and revised, and things are constantly, and we have like different versions of it. So we save the older versions; they're not like thrown away, exactly so that we know what changed, and whenever we feel like something needs more explaining, that can be done too.
Yeah, that's the usual GDD, like several pages with pictures and graphs and all that kind of stuff.
And it's kind of like the dream, right? It's it's like what we want to do is there. So it's somewhere to go and then check things when I don't know, if we struggle with something and we okay, but what was the point of this really? Then we go there and it will be there. And we also use change sets, right? So different versions. And I'm not like super used to that yet. I'm very new to it, but I've been managing to do it, like to actually access things. It's nice, guys. And I think it's very nice to see different points in development and in action, and not all of them will work properly, but that's kind of part of the fun too. I can say it's fun now that I'm not like dealing with it.
And now you can play the game, right? Definitely.
Yeah, so it's that's also interesting to have, and I'm kind of new to this. I don't know what else do we do actually. Oh, I think we have. Of course, it's related to the change sets, but we have this thing which kind of tells everyone what was the latest thing added to different change sets. Right, so it's
Bob the bot.
Oh, we can say
Ross,
it's the Bob Ross bot, and it's not only it tells us like the latest changes, but it also tells us motivational quotes.
Yes, exactly. Like that's like more of the version management part of it. I don't know how to say versionamento in English. I forgot the
I don't know.
But anyway, that's versioning. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Does it make sense, English speakers?
Yeah, I hope it does. But it kind of tells a story, and that's a story that's important to be told and to be registered. Firstly, because you eventually have to roll back and undo something that you did that messed up. But it kind of tells a story of the development itself, and it's an interesting way. I've never saw it as a documentation thing, but it kind of is.
I think it kind of is.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
Because like I'm not that involved with coding, for example. Not that involved. I'm not involved with coding, but I like to know what's going on. And then there, it's like a summarized version of like, okay, so what changed? What was like most recently added to the game? And then even though, of course, we have meetings and we talk about things every day and we know what people are doing everywhere, sometimes it's nice to have something written there. Okay, this was done. This is ready. So I think I don't know, for me it kind of counts.
Yeah, and it kind of feeds back into the documentation itself, because we like when we write down a GDD, that's the idealized version and the totally not real and realistic version of the game. Like those are things that we wish we were gonna do, and we forget about a bunch of stuff that we have to do, and we never take in consideration things that people will do regardless if it's in the GDD or not. Sometimes people will just get excited with the feature and start like working on it over and over and implementing new stuff, and like once you see it, it's a completely different thing. Hopefully it's for the best. Maybe it's something that it wasn't planned, but it's good to have, whatever. But sometimes it, like reading those change sets, you kind of end up like, okay, now we have this, let's see what we can put inside the GDD to represent this better, or what can be changed, Definitely.
And we also have lots and lots of stuff on shared folders, like lots of diagrams and planning, and like right now everything that we're writing is there, so anyone can go and check,
okay, what right? That's not available for you guys.
Yeah, no. All the whole team can go and check if they want, okay, what's been written for this, and what's the tone that's, okay, I don't want to, let's say, try and see it in game. I want to just read, you can read there, and lots of diagrams, guys, like lots of diagrams.
Yeah, it turns out diagrams are very good ways of like communicating, like simulating, or at least trying to imagine the gameplay experience, like the screen flows and the journey of the player, interacting with that thing. So we use diagrams.io, I guess that's the name of the thing.
Yeah.
To draw a lot of diagrams. I try to make them look good, but it's very hard sometimes. You don't have many tools to make them look good, so it's normally just very, very functional.
We do our best.
Yeah, we do our best. Yeah, we're trying at least.
We at least try to like keep things aligned.
Oh please, yeah, please do. Once we were like checking a diagram and there was a line that was like slightly designed, that was killing me, and like she spent the whole time talking about what was actually written in the diagram and what was actually important, and I was like fully distracted by the line. But anyway, yeah, so keeping things aligned, that's more important than keeping them beautiful. Okay, so Red Link, documentation is a thing that I use as well to limit myself from getting too overboard with ideas and get out of hands. That's totally a thing.
Yeah.
Because, our brain, like creative minds, they are limitless. Like every time you think about something, it will bring like extra 3 or 4 ideas that will complement that. And not only is it important to like check the documentation to see like if those ideas are actually good, because sometimes they seem good when you're looking like focused on that, but when you look at the broader picture, they all just wouldn't fit. But also, so you remember yourself that you'll eventually have to implement and make a game out of that document. And if the document is starting to get too complicated or too big, you might be in trouble.
Yeah, and of course it depends on the size of the project. Like it should be proportional. Totally. But I think it fits with what you were saying before. Like Sometimes something might get people on the team excited, and then they'll like start working on something which is not exactly the main goal, at least sometimes not yet, or sometimes it's just like, I don't know, someone got excited about something which was not planned, and it can be super nice. It can bring a fresh feeling to the project. It can be something a little different, but it can also be, I won't say like a waste of time, because I don't think that's a good way of putting it, but it's, you're dedicating time to something which is not as impactful maybe on the final result, which everyone needs to have. So I think it's also important, to keep yourself, like to keep your mind on track. And of course, there will be, like, you can't avoid detours because creative minds. Exactly. But you can avoid, getting off track.
Totally. So Alexandre Haru is asking, do you usually use spreadsheets or for documentation, or do you prefer text documents? Do you want to answer that one?
Well, I don't know. I like spreadsheets for a bunch of stuff. Like, I really do, but I feel like they're a bit more practical. Like when I want to maybe... Oh, wow. Sorry. For when you want to check something, you want to visualize something. But I tend to prefer text, and I write in text most things, and I don't know if it's very clear there, but I end up really writing more than just making a table out of things. But that's
yeah, I'm actually quite like the opposite, not in terms of going against what you thought. It's just that my habit is very different. I totally run away from physical stuff, even though sometimes I like when we're designing things, I like to draw them down. So I kind of have this very small sketchbook.
It's so tiny.
Yeah, it's very tiny, and it's just in case, it's something that's on my mind, but I cannot like express my idea fully without like putting it down on paper. But it's normally just for like drawings and crazy stuff. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, but usually I only document stuff like digitally. Normally through text. Like I avoid spreadsheets, mostly because I think they're very good at organizing information.
Yeah.
But normally the information that I document, it's not like the focus of it is not to be organized, it's to be like understood and to have like a narrative in it. A narrative in a sense of like someone's gonna read it and it needs to come across as, I don't know, there's a message here, there's a meaning here, there's a certain idea that I want to, I want that to be in that person's mind. And I think spreadsheets, they section too much, like they kind of break the flow of it. So I normally use I don't know, Google Docs. There are some tools like Coda and what's the one that we use with N?
Notion?
Notion, yeah. In Notion there are like a mix.
Notion's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of a mix of a spreadsheet. It's like an evolution of a document. It's kind of half spreadsheet, half text-based, half like visually organizing stuff and cards and all that kind of stuff.
To-do lists.
Yeah, to-do lists. It's like very rich. It's a very rich tool to use, so it can pretty much fulfill anything you need in terms of documentation. Let me see.
Yeah. I think spreadsheets might be a good option if you're not like you don't have the patience to actually draw a whole diagram. You can use the spaces there, and you can kind of make a diagram. So I think it's another way of using it if you don't want to really dedicate yourself to creating a whole thing and drawing the whole thing, and you just want the spaces there, and they're already sectioned, and you can just use what's already there. Sometimes using templates for diagrams, I don't know, I can never use a template properly, like
me too. So I always end up like erasing it all up and starting all over again.
Exactly.
Zahnes, welcome to the stream, by the way. Long time I don't see you, I guess. But long time we don't stream, right? So who am I to say anything? So he's saying Behemoth Studios does the same. Like they're trying to go to new genres. Yeah, I think that's like there's very good value in that. Like we enjoy doing that. It's what we do. We try to create new stuff all the time. But it's it requires a lot more communication and effort and try to understand what we're actually doing than it would if we had like I don't know we had been doing Chroma Squad versions 3, 4, 5, whatever. Like we're always doing the same game. You eventually get quick. But okay, your video's back. You're muted.
I lost my connection for a second there.
Oh, okay, cool. You're back. That's important.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right. So over time, I learned that a little crucial difference between documenting information for self-control and documenting processes and information for team access. Yeah, that's a very good thing to have like separated, right? You probably do that with your notebooks, your book notes. But
on
notebooks, yeah. I usually have like local documents that are like only aimed for me. I have a Notion for myself, like to organize my life.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So yeah, not everything needs to go to the team or needs to be in the same place.
And sometimes a task is like. It can seem like one big thing for the team, but for you, it's like lots of many smaller tasks. So it's something that the team doesn't have to know each little step you're taking towards that goal that you have, but you need to get organized around that. So
totally, yeah. Mahu Mushi is sharing some tools that he uses. That they uses GitHub, Confluence, and Google Docs. Yes, that's like GitHub is very resourceful, right? I remember the time like we used to work with GitHub. I used to work with GitHub back when I was starting to develop, and it had a lot of like great features there that like I never heard of, and then eventually someone said like, oh, you can do this, and I could, oh my god, that's amazing. Like you can plan sprints and organize your whole team through GitHub. That's awesome. Like I think we're going to this place where we have like many very powerful and very rich like tools that can be used, and like any of those can like fit your purposes and be used in a very optimal way. But it's always nice to share, right? What are your recommendations to someone who wants to become a game designer? What are the skills and frameworks, softwares that I should study? Damn. Okay.
Wow.
We had a video on like starting in the industry. But it was very, it wasn't focused on game design specifically. It was like mostly about game development. But I think many of those stuff applied to that question of yours. So firstly, I suggest you take a look at our YouTube channel. we have an episode there of live stream talking about like starting in the game industry, and I'll ask, like, forgive me beforehand if it's in Portuguese, because sometimes we stream in Portuguese, sometimes in English, and I don't recall if that specific stream was in English. But anyway, very short. You have, like, I'd say you have to communicate yourself very well. Not that you need to be like very good at, you know, giving TED talks or whatever. It's just that, like, you have to know how to make information flow, and that includes documenting stuff, right? So find an effective way of like making information flow inside the team. I'd say you must be very good, or at least enjoy learning. You can't be good at learning, but you can enjoy learning. You can like have that small fire in your heart that you want to like learn everything and study everything, and you will never be able to. But at least you have to have that inside of you, because like designing stuff and studying design is all about deep diving into the most absurd and unusual places, you know, and subjects, and having to get references and having to understand how things work. So yeah, you gotta love studying and learning new stuff, and I don't know, start by like trying some games, designing tabletop games, designing small games for you, and you know, start there, I guess. Do you have any tips on that?
I don't know. Well, I always say that if you want to work with something, you gotta try to learn everything you can about it. So I say, like, I don't know, play a lot and try to understand why you like things, and understand how and why experiences are enjoyable or not enjoyable. And because I think that's very important for a designer, like to understand what can make I don't know, what can make a dungeon very nice to explore and exciting, and what can make a dungeon just a boring hell. So I think, you know, playing a lot and paying attention to what you're playing. Unfortunately, part of working with games is that you have to always try to think what's, you know, making it work.
Yeah.
It might lose a little bit of the magic.
Yes.
But you know, you always have to try to see what's behind what you're seeing on screen, and I think that's like very important for the designer, because if you're working with art, you can see beautiful art and you'll be like, okay, this is very nice, this is a great style. You know, you want to understand how it works, you want to maybe try your shot at that style. That's very nice. But if you're designing, you have to try and understand what the designers behind games that you love were thinking, and how they came up with that experience for you.
Yeah, totally. I feel like 90% of the games I play, I don't play them anymore. Like, I only analyze them.
You study them.
Yeah, I only study them. But that's interesting, because the last 10% of the games that like really get me, and I really get like immersed into and loving, those become like very special, and it's weird because sometimes I have to like remember myself to study those, because I'm losing in the flow. I'm totally lost in the flow. But yeah, it kind of changes the way you see games, but it's important to do it. It's very important, by the way. Okay, so Creams Bacon is here. Welcome, Creams. By the way, it's been a while. Also, I don't know. My memory is messing up. Okay, so I just gotta point this out because you might be noticing me like talking nonsense and maybe babbling a little bit more than usual, and that's because I barely slept this night. All right, I had a very, very poor sleeping night. Today is hot as hell here. It's like 41 Celsius here. Like
I'm wearing a sweater.
yeah. She's like in the best place ever to be right now. It's hot and dry here. I'm drinking water. Like we have freaking bottle of water here, huge, so just so we don't die from dehydration. So it's not an ideal. An ideal context for a live stream, but I try my best, okay?
It's fine, you're not babbling, don't worry.
All right, so yeah, your team should have a clear vision of the priorities, and I got a tiny notebook, exactly like that one. Oh, this one. Yeah, it's a good one. I should use it more. I have this one like for years right now. I should have finished it, but anyway.
I have like 2 notebooks just like on this desk and 2 others like on another desk. I don't know how I deal with just like tiny.
Yeah, but it's just like this one. Like we have a closet here that is full of notebooks. This is mine, and the rest is all hers, you know. But anyway, you should try to use Tetra. If you enjoy Notion, it's free up to 5 users. Tetra, never heard of it. I'm gonna take notes of that. I'm gonna check it out. And Angelisette. I have been losing far too many hours in outer space. This conversation doesn't apply to me, but I wanted to support and say keep up the great work. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so documentation, not documentation, outer space is, it was like, I think one of the projects that we as a team at Behold looked at it and were like, okay, we need to document this because like it was so crazy to develop that one. Like we barely had any reference in what we wanted, you know. So like the documentation was a very, very thorough process, and we started like using tools that we're using in this new game as well, like engines of play. If you don't know what engines of play is, you should take a look at it on YouTube. There are a few GDC talks about it. Engines of play, it's a very good tool to understand what your game's gonna be and what kind of player is gonna be playing your game. It's awesome. And also marketing plan, it's important to have one, right?
That's very important.
Yeah, and we don't have one for these new games. We gotta get one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yet.
It's still soon. We have time for this. But anyway. All right. Yeah, the video is in Portuguese. You just checked. Thank you, Red Link, and I'm sorry for that. So you're not gonna have that video. But I think we covered like a very good start for you here. If you have any other questions,
we didn't mention like many softwares, but I'm not that familiar with many softwares, so sorry.
Yeah, I guess softwares they kind of depend on what you're doing and what you're working with. You know who you're working with. But
and I think
Sorry. No. It's just, if you have any other questions, like if you want more details or more information about that, feel free to join our Discord. I think I programmed the bot. Let me see if it's working. It is not working. All right. Oh no, I used the wrong command. It's this one.
Let's see.
Discord. Please work. It didn't. Lovely. All right. So yeah, I'm just gonna write it down. It's discord.gg/Behold Studios. You can like find us there. We're as Callie and Victor. And you know, you can just ask us. We're gonna be very glad to answer your questions about it.
Yeah.
Yes, apparently the bot doesn't work while you're wrist streaming. That's sad. But anyway, yeah, we're done, I guess. Like not with the topic because we still have a lot of things to talk about. but we're done with the time. So I think we're gonna have like a part 2 of this chat eventually. Maybe, who knows? But thank you all very much for joining. Thank you, Callie, for joining me again.
Thank you for inviting me, and thanks everyone who's watching us.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to like get Callie to help us more with this, because I'm starting to enjoy having company during live streams. Not that you people don't give me, you know, enough company. You people are awesome. But it's good to have like a voice chat every once in a while.
Yeah, an exchange.
Exactly. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Right now we're focusing more on developing things like developer focused videos, like things about game dev and how we do stuff. And that's because we are in a weird spot between 2 projects. We're like wrapping up Outer Space for consoles while we're heading with the new project, unannounced project. So we can't share much about it. So we're now like talking about game dev stuff. But we usually do that like every once in a while, and then bring some information about the new projects. Eventually, we're going to be able to share some information about this new game with you as well. So
I'm very excited about that.
Yes, yeah, we all are.
Waiting
like,
for that moment.
Oh, it's so difficult not to share stuff because the game is so good. Anyway, and yes, so please follow us here on YouTube/Twitch.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, and subscribe. Exactly. Hit the like button. No, just kidding. Well, you can obviously. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to like keep talking about this, please join our Discord. The link is in the chat, and I think it was sent. It was sent to Facebook and Twitch. It wasn't sent to YouTube. I don't know. Something weird is happening here.
But we can put the link in the description.
Yeah, it is. It's
yeah.
by default.
Okay, so that's
so,
it.
Yeah, the link is in the description. And yeah, let's see you when we have another live stream, possibly in 2 weeks. And I honestly hope I don't forget and skip it next time.
But I like your honesty, like possibly in 2 weeks. It's not even probably.
Yeah, exactly. I used to say like in 2 weeks, and then I'd forget, or I have I don't know, a problem and couldn't keep up with my promise. So yeah, hopefully in 2 weeks. All right. And yes, that's it. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.